today we're going to talk a little bit about some more algebraic terms. So in the very first section of Chapter 8, we introduced some different terminology, some different vocabulary dealing with algebraic expressions, the pieces of algebraic expressions, different things that we can do with algebraic expressions. So what we're going to focus on today is we're going to focus on terms of an expression. Right? So a term is a number or a product of a number and variable raised to powers. So a term is going to be each little individual piece of our expression. Right? The coefficient of the term is the numerical factor. So for example, the numerical coefficient of 3x is 3 because 3x really means 3 times x, and factor indicates multiplication. So the number out front is our coefficient. We actually used this word back in section 7.3 when we were solving proportion problems, saying that when we were solving our mini equations, we were dividing by our coefficient, which was our number in front of our variable. All right, so in this first example, we're going to look a little more closely at some algebraic terms. So given the term, we are going to identify the coefficient, the variable, and the exponent of the variable. So our first term is 8x squared. Our coefficient, our numerical factor out front is 8. Our variable is x. Our exponent is 2. Okay, our next term is negative 3a. Our coefficient is negative 3. Right? So if we do have a negative sign out front, we are thinking about our coefficient being a negative number. Our variable is a. Right? Our a looks like it doesn't have an exponent, but remember that anything to the first power is always itself, right? So we could think about that a as having an invisible 1 for our exponent if we wanted to. Right? So if you want to write in an invisible 1 here, whether or not we do it in this chapter, you might not necessarily do so. As we go on to the next couple of chapters and as we're dealing with some of the other stuff later on in the semester, we might actually take some time to put some of those invisible ones in. Right? But either way we look at it, our exponent of that a is 1. Right? M to the 4th. Right? Well, this one looks like it's missing a coefficient. But remember, 1 times anything is just itself. So if I put a 1 times m to the 4th out front, that's not going to change my m to the 4th. So this might be another case where we want to think about there being an invisible 1 as our coefficient out front. Right? So we could have invisible 1s as exponents, we can have invisible 1s as coefficients. Right? So our numerical factor in this is just a 1. Right? Our variable is m. Our exponent, easy to pick out this time, is 4. Right? Negative y. Well, now we're going to have a negative 1, right? So there's still an invisible 1 in front of this y. Our variable is y. We also have an invisible 1 as our exponent here. 7, well, our coefficient, our numerical part is 7. We do not have a variable. Right? We do not have a variable, and we do not have an exponent here. As we're thinking about our terms, we do want to be able to pick out our coefficients, our variable, and our exponents, and we also want to be able to recognize different pieces of these. So looking at our next example, example 2, answer each question based on the expression. So our expression is negative 5x cubed plus 6x squared plus x minus 4. What is our first term? Well, our first term is going to be negative 5x cubed. Right? That's the first piece of our expression. What is the exponent on the second term? Right? Well, our second term is this x squared. Our exponent is 2. What is our coefficient of the third term? Well, our third term is x. In front of that x, there's an invisible 1. Right. What is our constant term? Anytime we see the word constant, that should make us think that this is the term that is numbers only. Right? So in this case, our term that just has numbers is the negative 4. Right? So going up to the previous example, that 7 is a constant term as well. It doesn't have a variable. Right? So as we start to go through these next couple of sections, you definitely want to be familiarizing yourself with your terminology. So make sure you know what a term is, make sure you know how to pick out the terms, make sure you know how to pick out the different coefficients and exponents, and recognize the different pieces of our algebraic expressions.